cards like Dragon Whisperer alongside of Lightning Berserker.
So this is a deck that we saw a lot of last year during that standard season. I've seen very little of it thus far, but there are some new attractive additions for this sort of strategy. This is an aggressive take on the deck. There's 4 copies of Dragon Whisperer, which is a natural addition. It's double red in the mana cost and is something powerful to do with all of your mana left over. You see Zurgo Bellstriker here as well. Lightning Berserker, so a lot of the mono red action, but a little bit more double red and triple red centric. Purpose as well.
Yeah, on the surface, I imagine Chris is going to assume he's playing against mono red, Atarka red, and we'll see whether or not his play reflects that. Travis starts on Zurgo Bellstriker, whereas Chris on the draw just has a temple. So this is the traditional spot where you'd, know as a temple deck, you know that you're behind. Zurgo will swing for 2, and Travis will play a Lightning Berserker. So on the surface, this is Atarka red, right?
Exactly. It's going a little bit higher up the curve. Oddly enough, no copies of Perforos. That's just a card I would assume would have been here. The big mana things here, basically just Dragon Whisperer. Those are the big payoff here for mana, and Lightning Berserker as well.
Yeah, I was like, how cool is Lightning Berserker in a Nykthos deck?
Well, I'm very surprised to see no copies of Perforos because it seems so well suited to a lot of things that are going on here. The dashing, for example.
Yeah, Chris played a Satyr Wayfinder and didn't hit a land. Now here's a danger to Lightning Berserker, so it does trade with Satyr Wayfinder. Travis will get around that though by dashing a second one. Chris blocks 1 and Travis will sink the mana into the unblocked Lightning Berserkers. That will be 5 damage coming across. Chris it down to 13. And the Lightning Berserker returns to hand.
Some other, the heavy on red mana sort of cards, Eidolon of the Great Revel, Flamewake Phoenix, goes up to Stormbreath Dragon, Ash Cloud Phoenix, Thunderbreak Regent. Fnatic of Mogus, the one real devotion payoff here.
So are we on the full 4 copies of this card, or what's our how committed to this Fnatic of Mogus style thing are we?
3 copies. It's the top of the curve. This is pretty light on devotion payouts on the balance here, and only 2 copies of Nykthos, so not really going all in. The absence of Perforos also an indicator of that.
Yeah, interesting. Once again, this is another mono red deck that's playing just 2 copies of Goblin Rabblemaster. Really just a card that has fallen out of favor.
Well, it doesn't do anything to synergize with Nykthos. It's only single red in the mana cost, but still a very powerful card in the abstract.
So Chris just plays a temple and passes. It's going to be another dash Lightning Berserker for Travis. And this is going to be Murderous Cut on the Bellstriker from Chris. We'll see whether or not Travis sinks all his mana into Berserker again. It does feel like he's falling behind if he's doing that.
It's very dangerous because if Chris has something like Sidisi here, the ground gets locked up fairly quickly.
Yeah, it's just going to be the 1 he'll pass. The Berserker will come back to his hand, however. He does play Dragon Whisperer for the turn. And now Chris picks up the card and reads it, and if you're Chris, you have to think, okay, hold on, what's happening?
Well, it still looks like it's a mono red aggro list with maybe some weirdo threat.
Yeah, Death Mist Raptor to play for Chris, and a 4th land into play tapped. You see Travis coming up on lands a little bit here. His hand has Lightning Berserker, but also has Crater's Claws, Thunderbreak Regent. He really would like a 4th mana available to him.
Yeah. Especially now, I mean, that's a pretty top-heavy hand right there.
Yeah, Ash Cloud Phoenix, Stormbreath Dragon. This is the kind of hand that if he had his early drop creatures and had a Nykthos instead of Mountain number 3, I think we might have actually seen Travis not trade off his creatures as quickly, and we would have seen this deck start to power out larger threats.
Exactly. With Thunderbreak Regent into something like Crater's Claws, there's an incentive here for Travis to just keep his board as intact as possible. With no Nykthos, though, he's just sort of on this awkward mono-red beatdown sort of plan. Now, that still may be good here.
Yeah. But in order to play these top-end cards, he is sacrificing a lot of his early game plan.
Yeah. Though, with Dragon Whisperer here, he's able to go in the air and fly over some blockers.
Yeah. Jumps it up in the air, pumps it. Chris down to 9. Dragon Whisperer, actually a very interesting card. One of the more powerful cards out of Dragons of Tarkir.
Well, there's so much competition now for red aggressive creatures. These decks don't even play Mardu Scout anymore. That Dragon Whisperer has not shown up a lot. And I think if it was printed 5 or 10 years ago, it would have been in every single mono-red aggro deck that existed. That said, I think it is an attractive option for Nykthos-centric decks because it's double red, and it's a awesome mana sink. And it's an early aggressive play as well. So we don't see a lot of red devotion strategies, but Dragon Whisperer feels like it slots right in.
5th land for Chris. Now we'll see what he gets to go toward. As he starts to work up toward the higher end of his deck, he does have some attractive options. Starts to get cards like Whip of Erebos that could be really big problems.
Whip of Erebos is the biggest problem, possibly in the format for a mono red aggressive deck. Now, Travis's deck has a little bit more punch than your average mono red beatdown deck, so it is not all doom and gloom necessarily if Whip of Erebos shows up, but that's the card Travis has got to hope to avoid or kill Chris before he can get to it.
Yeah, Dragon Whisperer could actually, in theory, compete with the late game of a Whip of Erebos. Whereas if you're playing, I think, a Tarka Red, once they play a Whip and start swinging in, the game is kind of over. But if you have a Nykthos and a Dragon Whisperer, you could start pumping out dragons and maybe erase Whip. But this is the play which, I mean, you really don't like seeing this. So the 5-mana face-down morph go in these Deathmist Raptor decks is so scary. It can be Den Protector getting back something like Murderous Cut. Now Travis does hit his Nykthos. Is it too late, though?
Well, this is a pretty good spot here because Chris probably has to use his Murderous Cut here, getting rid of the Thunderbreak region. That's 3 points of damage on the way out. And then you're getting closer and closer to Crater's Claws being lethal.
Yeah, so Travis, you see, wanting to keep his devotion intact. And now he's kind of shown what's going on with this Nykthos Thunderbreak Regent play. Now Chris knows, hey, wait a second, you're not a Tarka Red. You're doing something a little different.
You see Chris there unmorphing the Den Protector and getting back the Murderous Cut, but it's probably going to take him 2 turns to be able to win this game, and he may be taking a little bit too much damage on the way out.
Well, he has no reach. Yeah, you're right, next turn, this is lethal. If he doesn't kill Thunderbreak Regent, the 4 in the air plus the Crater's Claws will kill him. He's going to try to life gain his way away from it. Here's Courser showing Wayfinder. But this isn't enough. Land will gain him a life up to 9. That is enough mana to Murderous Cut. He does have 2 cards in his graveyard.
Yeah, Chris there knew that he could play the Courser, hoping to find a land on top because he could still Murderous Cut the Thunderbreak region in any scenario.
And we'll see whether or not he makes that play. If he does, he definitely is going to do it during his turn so that Travis doesn't get bonus mana off that Nykthos.
Yeah, right now with Travis having 4 red mana symbols in play, that Nykthos represents positive mana if he gets to the next turn.
And here's Murderous Cut. Once again, taking care of Thunderbreak. Chris goes down to 6. And does some pretty good attacking of his own. Here's 9 damage coming across. That's a 2-turn clock.
He's got a lot coming back on the way back. We'll see if the light totals get updated here momentarily. Very critical that Travis remember that Thunderbreak region trigger. Because if he wins, it's going to be by barely holding on. And
yeah,
he doesn't have 3 damage to spare.
He could chump block with a Lightning Berserker, do some finagling. Yep, Chris is at 6, though. The trigger did happen. That's the kind of trigger that's you don't see missed very often because it's just so exciting. It's why you play the card.
Yeah.
Draw there looks to be another Dragon Whisperer. If he had another land, Travis could really go off this turn. But he needs to stay alive and at least give himself the potential to draw.
I mean, even if he's able to say, I'll go ahead and give Dragon Whisperer flying and just deploy some chump blockers, that might give him just enough to be able to survive and then Crater's Claws the next turn for lethal.
If he draws a land, it would be for 4. Now there's the issue that if your cutting hair is so thin that even Chris getting a land drop for the Courser stops that line.
Yeah.
So he has another Whisperer.
But Travis cannot point removal spells at creatures here. That's not going to get him anywhere.
He's going to play the double chump block here. This is Ash Cloud Phoenix. And what I like here is if he plays Ash Cloud Phoenix, that's exactly 8 damage on Travis' side. I was going to say he could chump with Dragon Whisperer next turn, swing 4 in Crater's Claws, but no, he's going to have to block 2 things.
Yeah.
It's not going to be enough. Draws Satyr Wayfinder from Chris. And you have to assume that Chris is going to find a land to gain a life off that because he has drawing Satyr Wayfinder.
Yeah, he's got a lot of looks at it. He already had a Yavimaya Coast in hand, so he's going to 7 here.
Yep. And you see Chris plays that from hand instead of playing the Satyr Wayfinder for the turn because he wants to draw Whip of Erebos next turn because that will win him the game.
Regardless, Chris is not looking at an extra card this turn, so it's Whip of Erebos as his next draw step if the game somehow gets there or no. Whip's probably better than the average draw if Travis has some weird way of getting out from under this. Maybe he has a main deck Anger the Gods or something like that. I think you'd still rather have Whip.
Yeah.
So I don't think there's much of an incentive for Chris to cast the Wayfinder here.
But if Chris doesn't swing the whole team here, Travis will win.
Yeah. Because Chris needs to get Travis to commit to Ash Cloud Phoenix as a blocker. That has to be part of this.
And he figures it out. All right, makes the right attack. Now he's going to force Travis to draw something.
Although now, if Travis is double chump blocking, he may want to cast, Chris may want to cast the Cedar Wayfinder because he just needs a blocker on the way back to handle the morph.
All right, Dragon Whisperer will step in front of Death Mist Raptor. Ashclaw Phoenix will trade with Den Protector. Well, trade in that it'll turn face down.
So now I think Chris is supposed to cast the Cedar Wayfinder even with Whip on top because he just needs to protect himself from next turn.
Yeah, you'd say the Whip closes out the game next turn, but he already has the game closed out next turn.
There's no next turn. If Travis is killing him on this turn or he's not winning the game, and Chris is better served just having a chump blocker.
And go back the draw from Travis. He needs to find 7 damage in here. That is a tall order based off his hand.
And the draw step of Zurgo will be of no help.
And that Den, this is, to me, it's the strength of Den Protector here. So one of the weaknesses of Sultai Reanimator is that it's a little slow, it sets up shop, and it doesn't have that many kill spells because it plays so many creatures in the deck. But what I really like what's happened in this game is that Den Protector allowed him, when he did hit one of his few kill spells, to double up on it. And it's that second Murderous Cut was the game.
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen games with Sultai Reanimator quite frequently where something like, I had my shop going, I got some things going on, but didn't find Web of Erebos, and just lost to Flyers. That happens quite a bit.
How does he play all 4 of those? All 3 of those? He doesn't have quad red. He can't do that. Well, Travis is going to play a bunch of blockers onto the board, try to survive another turn. He played Whisperer, Berserker, and Bellstrike. And he started. Yeah, and there is a pause for Judge here. There was a Judge play. See, yeah, he didn't actually have quad red to make all of those creatures.
Yeah, Nykthos isn't providing any colored mana in this spot, so and every card that Travis played last turn was a red mana symbol card, so that deployment there from Travis was not legal.
Yeah. So the judge is going to make a ruling on it in this situation. This is interesting. So what happens, in this situation? First, the judge will determine can they rewind it. Now, Chris has already drawn a card, played a land, so it's up to the judge's discretion if they want to go all the way back. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the judge will make a ruling on that. As far as that's, then you determine the judge. It's also the judge's discretion. Was this intentional? If not, the mono red player will likely get a warning of some sorts, and they'll continue the game from there. If the judge determines he thinks it was intentional, then they'll go. Then an additional ruling will be made.
Exactly, and I kind of understand. Travis is in that spot there where he's probably dead. He sees the only line of play that lets him survive potentially because he needs a bunch of blockers. So just spits this up on the table. He's got 4 mana versus his 4 mana worth of creatures. It looks okay, but it's not because one of his lands colorless. Right. So they're going to figure that all out momentarily.
Yeah, and we'll wait for the ruling there. So what will certainly happen is the mono red player will get a warning for illegally casting spells. But outside of that, the questions are, can they rewind it? And it looks like what the judges ruled that we are close enough to the infraction that he just rewinded it. Travis had to pick only 3 mana worth of cards to cast. You see the Nykthos is now untapped, and they replayed the game, and Travis receives a warning.
Yep.
It's a kind of warning that if you get a lot of those in a tournament, they start to get upgraded into something. But one of those, you're usually fine. So we're back on Chris's turn. 1 fewer blocker in play for Travis, and Chris swinging again. And we said if he made it to this turn, it should be pretty easy for him to close it out.
Yeah, Travis again has to just chump block these Death Mist Raptors. He's going to fall to 1 or chump block away everything, and
Sidisi is the top card of Chris's deck.
The leftovers here from Chris should be enough to get him across the finish line.
Plays another Death Mist. Doesn't even morph the Death Mist to get Death Mist. No, that's fine. Fanatic Amogus. That's not... He did... How many mana symbols? 1? That's not 8. All right, on to game 2. Chris Moore's Lent takes game 1.
I think that if Travis had his lands there on time, he might have been able to steal that one. But there's a couple of turns there where, he got in his early shots and had to have turns of pump my Dragon Whisperer and give it flying and hit you for 3.
The turns where he's dashing Berserker, pumping it for 2, bringing it back and saying go, that was the window where you want to just be making lots of stuff.
Exactly. He doesn't have a lot to do in the 3 mana range. He's got a lot going on at 1 and 2, and he's got a lot going on at 4+. Not a lot at 3, and that's what really doomed him that game. He didn't make his 4th land drop for a while, and he didn't have Goblin Rabblemaster or any of his powerful 3 mana plays, so he was just kind of dumping mana into the Dragon Whisperer, and Chris was able to turn the game around there and just start threatening too much damage with the Death Mist Raptors.
Yeah, so going to sideboarding. So looking at the Mono Red Devotion sideboard, I'm assuming it will look a lot like an Antarka Red sideboard, but he may have some interesting cards. What are we looking at?
A Haven of the Spirit Dragon, a Fanatic of Mogus, 2 copies of Seismic Crusher, 2 copies of Outpost Siege, 2 copies of Scouring Sands, 2 copies of Stoke the Flames, 3 Rose, 2 Draconic Roar. I think you're going to see just some of the red removal come in. I think Draconic Roar is a fine card to be bringing in against Sultai to begin with because it's Sidisi. Also, if they have Death Mist Raptor and Den Protector in the deck, they're flush with targets, so I think that's fun to bring in.
Roast seems pretty fair against those cards, too.
Roast is not bad, though a lot of creatures have value when they come into play or when they unmorph and so forth. It's a lot better at handling just big threats like Tassiger and Siege Rhino.
Like Surrak.
Yeah, it's great against those kind of cards. Chris doesn't have a lot of them, but if Travis wants more removal, it still kills stuff. I think the extra copy of Fanatic of Mogus is just powerful in any kind of slower game, and Travis should probably bring in the 4th.
Yeah, cards like Fanatic are really strong when your opponent is light on removal spells, which Sultai Reanimator really is. Now, post-board, that's going to be less true.
Yeah.
As we look at what he has. His sideboard is actually 15 one-ofs. So rather than going down the whole list, what are the ones that are relevant here?
I think Bioblight is relevant. I think that Duress is potentially relevant. I think Stratus Dancer is relevant. I think Drown in Sorrow is relevant. And I think Disdainful Stroke is relevant.
He has a copy of, so yeah, Disdainful Stroke, Drown in Sorrow, Bioblight, Stratus Dancer, perhaps.
I would be worried about Foul Tongue Invocation in this matchup because Travis kind of he's got a lot of crappy creatures to fill out the earlier turns of the game. And unlike Mono Red Aggro, where gaining 4 life is just a potent thing to be doing, Devotion decks can often kill by a lot when they're doing their thing. So I think the burden of proof is really on. I actively want this sort of thing. And with Travis having a pretty reasonable lower end of his curve, I don't think Foul Tongue Invocation is going to be very good.
Yeah, it's interesting. So against traditionally against Mono Red, the card is not good. Too good, especially in a deck with as few dragons as Sultai has, because you might get a Hortling Outburst token, you might get some really bad stuff. Against Devotion, sometimes you're in the market for, I'll take a kill spell, any kill spell, because if you have 3 creatures in play and I haven't killed them, life's bad no matter what their names are. That said, this is certainly the worst of the kill spells.
Exactly. I mean, last year when we had a lot of Red Devotion, the strategy was in the sideboard games was just kill everything.
Yeah.
And that's still, to some extent, the case here. But Foul Tongue Invocation has a really low floor against Travis's deck because of all the 1-drops.
Yeah, it is. It'll be interesting to see how Chris sideboards it. Also, I kind of like that he has a 15-card sideboard. You don't always get that, but that's it's pretty neat.
I imagine you've done this before at some point in your life.
Yeah.
You play the types of decks that have 15 1-ofs, either because of Cunning Wish or because it's just some control sideboard.
Yeah. 15, I imagine... I don't know if you've ever registered a 15-card sideboard.
No. I mean, I have actually played some Cunning Wish decks, but even then I had some real sideboard cards.
Right. The red decks, I mean, how about this? Have you ever registered, how many times have you registered a 4-4-4-3 sideboard?
Oh, all the time. If I went back, I'd have to look, but I have 2 Legacy open top 8s and a standard open top 8, and I think all of them were 4-4-4-3 sideboards.
Yeah.
I'd have to go back and look, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
You're only playing the best cards, and in this matchup, this card is slightly better, so we play this one instead.
When I've dabbled in zoo decks, the Grand Prix Portland back here on Modern a little while ago, Invitational in Indianapolis, then I had more 1-subs and 2-ofs in sideboard because you have some options. You can actually go into longer games with some people, but when you're playing Mono Red, man, you just got to find there's only 4 or 5 reasonable cards to have in your sideboard to begin with, and you just got to play as many of those as possible.
All right, so we talked about the pins from Star City Game Night. You notice we've had a lot of things coming out, and one of these is the Star City Games Creature Collection. You saw that last year with all these squirrels. This is the new Spring 2015 collection. So our 4 new pieces, each season, we're going to have 3 creatures. So as you saw, these are the same ones on the pins. We have the kitten, the bee, and the bunny. And these are available on sleeves, playmats, and dice bags. And then each season, we also have one from our parody series. You have Eternal Witness from our winter collection. And this one's I really like this one too, from the spring collection. This is Delver of Squeakrits. You see that little mouse cleverly holding a piece of cheese.
That rolled right off your tongue. It took me a little while to get used to Delver of Squeakrits, but You got it on the first try.
I mean, yeah, man, it's secrets with a Q, and he's a mouse.
No, I mean, it's not that I didn't get the joke. It's that I was just having some trouble with the pronunciation.
Travis on the play for game 2. He starts off with some red mana symbols. This is going to be Zurgo, Bellstriker into Eidolon of the Great Revel. See the rest of his hand. He has brought in Roast. He has Roast, Flamewake Phoenix, Stormbreath Dragon, and Fnatic Amogus. He needs some lands. But
big time. The same story from last game. I mean, he's got to find a lot of mana here to be able to deploy his hand. Even Nykthos doesn't guarantee anything because he's only got the 3 red mana symbols in play right now.
Second Temple from Chris, but nothing else on Travis' side. He does have a great 3-drop, though, so it wasn't that bad. He drew Rabble Master. Already had a 3-drop in Flamewake, though. Really wanted the Mountain. And now we go for Courser of Krufix, and the grind begins from the Sultai deck. Deathmist Raptor waits on top. Travis needs a land.
Well,
and he hits.
So he's got Roast in hand, too, so he's got an answer to the Courser. This is not a bad turn. Drawing a land here is great.
I'm going to roast away the Courser. He had depth between Flamewake and Courser. Now, both players taking damage got shocked off each of these plays, the Courser and the Roast.
But this is way better for Travis than it is for
yeah.
Chris. I mean, Chris has to really protect his life total in this matchup, and Travis can be very aggressive about using it as a resource.
Well, Chris is down to 8. Remember, there's a Fnatic Amogus in Travis's hand, so this is 1 Flamewake and 1 Fnatic from dead.
And that's assuming that Chris can even effectively block this turn, which there's no guarantee of either.
Or even if just Travis draws a land. So Chris plays a 3-drop here, goes to 6. Travis draws a land, plays Fnatic, puts Chris at 2, and then swings and it's dead. You know, Chris can't play cheap spells, but he has to. Yeah, he's gonna have to play Deathmist Raptor. He'll go to 6, and he is dead to a land drop.
Yep. Yeah, all of his plays here that are reasonable trigger the Eidolon.
Yeah, you can't play Whip. That doesn't really do anything. It goes to 6. Even Flamewake Phoenix from Travis, even if he misses the land, but he doesn't. Fnatic, that deals 4. Chris is at 2.
Yeah, this attack just comes across the lethal. Yep.
Game 3. Redding it up.
Nice.
All right. I like that. Fnatic was really good there.
Eidolon of the Great Revel was really good there.
Yeah, actually, to be fair, Fnatic was the exact same card as Stoke the Flames right there. If you just had Stoke up, say we had Stoke upstairs, it's a 4-point burn spell for 4.
It's less fun. I mean, it's
yeah,
the same.
It's cooler.
It's way cooler to have Fnatic in that spot. But yes, outcome's the same either way. 4 points of damage gets it done, and Travis there with a lethal Fnatic.
One of the things that I do like out of this Devotion deck is that because so the difference, you could say, hey, that was really cool what you did with Fnatic, but it was the same thing as Stoke. You should just play, you should play a Tarka Red. What I do like about the Devotion deck is that, say we're in a situation where Chris is like an Obzon deck or a deck with just some good one-shot life gain, some Foul Tongue Invocation, some Siege Rhino, something like that. And a Tarka Red deck could really struggle there, whereas Travis would have had no trouble dealing 10 more damage.
The biggest difference is that Mono Red aggro, a Tarka Red, they're really good at dealing exactly 20 points of damage. And so every piece of life game is really problematic. We've seen games where, just Foul Tongue Invocation has given someone the breathing space to get to Dragon Lord, Ojutai, and that's barely enough to win the game.
Foul Tongue's a 2-for-1, right?
Exactly. I mean, if they're trying to get stoked out, and, it kind of counts as a 2-for-1. One of the merits for playing a deck like Mono Red Devotion is if your opponent gains 4 life here, 4 life there, they cast a Siege Rhino, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. If they're not contending your board, you can overpower that kind of stuff in spots where Mono Red aggro or a Tarka Red really can't keep up. Chris can have Courser Krufix in play for several turns unmolested, and that's no guarantee of anything. If that happens against Mono Red aggro or Tarka Red, that deck's very likely to lose because the blocking and the extra points of life gain, Mono Red is walking on too narrow of a tightrope to be able to overcome those kind of cards. But Mono Red Devotion can overpower that kind of stuff.
And it is a danger of doing this Sultai Reanimator deck, which to me, it's one of the few holdouts of these pure mid-range decks. It's what it does is it's really good at playing threats and grinding. These creatures have inherent 2-for-1s and 3-for-1s and synergy, and it's really hard to removal spell this deck out of the game and control it. But it's still playing somewhat fair, and it's light on removal. So someone who's setting up, a Nykthos shop. We saw this even in the Invitational when you saw Chris Granderson's Green-White Devotion against Reed Duke playing Sultai Reanimator. The really high synergy decks, these Nykthos things, they can overpower you.
Yes, and we saw a lot last year too. I'm curious to see. no copies of Perforos in Travis's deck because it seems so good to me, especially alongside the dash creatures.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of competition at 4. You look at this deck, there's Ash Cloud Phoenix, Thunderbreak Regent, Fanatic of Mogus. You have Lightning Berserker as another thing to pump mana into. I guess Travis is not really suffering for things to do on his top end once he has a board going and so forth.
I mean, you have to think he's playing Fanatics and Thunderbreaks first. Like, the question is, would be Ash Clouds then. But yeah, how many 4s can you play?
Yeah, in this list here, 3 Thunderbreak, 1 Ash Cloud, 3 copies of Fanatic with the 4th copy in the sideboard. Also, you have Outpost Siege. He's got 1 in the main deck, 2 in the sideboard. That's another high-impact 4-mana play. So a lot of good competition at 4.
Looks like both players not liking their first set of hands.
Which is typically good for Chris's deck and decks like Chris's deck. He does have some... He does have some synergy, has some interlocking pieces, but not nearly to the same extent as Travis.
Chris can always just go land Courser on the play, and he's fine on 6 cards. Travis, less so.
Yeah.
Yeah, playing a deck like Obzon, I know I would gladly play 5 cards versus 5 cards against just about anybody.
For sure, yeah. Just creatures and card drawing spells and removal.
I'll play some Temples and a Courser and yeah, whatever. As long as I get to 4 for a Rhino, I'm fine. Chris starting off on 2 untapped lands. It's going to be Zergo, Bellstriker, and a swing in from Travis. You do note when a player like a 3-color deck starts out on Llanowar Waste and Swamp, you have to wonder if they're mana screwed because they would be playing all their tap lands first.
Exactly. A turn 1 Swamp there is bad news for Chris because you want Temples to open up the game anyway, and it may imply a land light hand.
Yeah, so no play from Chris on the first 2 turns. Now for Travis, his turn 2 play was just nothing. So he's got some weakness as well. But he does have Flame Wake Phoenix on turn 3. It's going to try to join Zergo, Bellstriker on the attack. And looks like Chris does have a kill spell. But he's paying life points for it. He had to crack his fetch land. If it's Hero's Downfall, he's going to have to pain off that Llanowar Wastes. His mana is going to give him some issues, and he is against a red deck.
So this is another card that makes sense in an aggressive devotion list. Double red in the mana cost. That's nice for Nykthos and so forth. And there are a lot of 4-power creatures in this deck to trigger Flame Wake Phoenix's Ferocious Trigger.
Even Lightning Berserker can bring this guy back, which is a really... you wouldn't expect many 1-drops to be able to do that.
Right. Fanatic of Mogus does it right on its own.
Thunderbreak
Regent, Stormbreath Dragon.
Seems pretty solid. Hero's Downfall, you see he's shuffling up to the front of Chris's hand, and he's just going to buy himself time. He's going to go ahead and downfall the Phoenix.
You can see some hesitation there from Chris's side because he knows there's a risk of this coming right back, but this deck is so effective at locking up the ground that he's got to assume he answers Zergo in some roundabout way.
Well, so you think about Zergo and Flaming Phoenix are both 1-mana spells at this point when you downfall them. But what I like is that he took red mana symbols off the board from Travis.
Yeah. Also important, especially with Travis already having Nykthos in play.
All right, well, here, Chris painting again, this time for Satyr Wayfinder. He's going to grab Opulent Palace, put it into play. And yeah, there's been just some collateral damage off lands. Chris has done 3 to himself, now 5 to himself as he thought seizes. And now you see what you're working against. Rabblemaster, Draconic Roar, and a dragon to go with the roars.
Yeah, this has to be one of the 2 creatures. It's Rabblemaster is the biggest short-term threat, but the Stormbreath Dragon is powerful later on in the game, also turns on all those Draconic Roars. And if Chris has other creatures in hand that can die to Draconic Roar, he has to get Stormbreath out of the hand.
Yeah, and it's so hard leaving your opponent with a Rabblemaster on this board, right? But he's going to do just that.
Yeah, it doesn't look good, but Christopher's at 11 right now, and I just don't think he can afford to have those Draconic Roars playing his Searing Blaze. He needs to use some cards like Sidisi to stabilize this game, and he can't do that if he's taking damage along the way.
All right, Bellstriker and a Goblin swing in. Rabblemaster was the play from Travis. Chris will take 2 more, go to 11. Or 9. 11 was off the Thoughtseize. Did Travis hit the land? No, he did not. He hit Lightning Berserker. And now you got to count red mana symbols, because if that Berserker gets big enough, then the dragon's going to come with it. The play from Chris was Sidisi and some great interaction. It dumps the Death Mist Raptor into the graveyard and gets a zombie.
Well, the problem now is if Travis has 4 mana, he can just Draconic Roar away the 2 blockers here and connect for a bunch of damage.
Yeah, now fortunately there's not a dragon in Travis' hand. If there was, that'd be, yeah, all sorts of bad. But you're right, this is still a ton of damage, and maybe more than Chris can get by. 4th land from Travis. Here's a Draconic Roar in the Sidisi, and it's going to be a roar again, I think.
I think it's your Lightning Berserker, so I think he may be considering dashing and attacking with everything. I would have preferred here to just get that token out of the way because the Rabblemaster damage is just so much.
Yeah. Here's a swing. Both both the new Goblin, Lightning Berserker, and Bell Striker. Yeah, I agree. This seems strange because if the Berserker were to stay on the table, then I think there's a pretty good case for getting more red mana symbols out, but that's not going to happen.
Yeah. And now Chris might actually have to block this turn no matter what because he knows he can't block next turn. Or at least Travis always has the option of making Chris unable to block next turn.
Question is if he wants to block he probably has to block the Berserker. Does he want to block the Goblin or the Berserker?
Probably the Berserker, because again, if he's anticipating not being able to block with this next turn, then he's got to get the highest value thing off the table right now while he can.
Oh, because he thinks he's going to get Draconic Ward?
Yeah, he knows that Travis still has a Draconic Ward left in hand, so he can't count on the zombie blocking next turn.
If he blocks, I'll throw the other thing though. If he blocks the Goblin and then draws another creature, well, you can't Draconic Ward two things.
Sure.
So yeah, he's going to go with the Goblin. He'll take 4, go to 5. And this does take a point of damage off next turn's Rabblemaster, if that happens. It's not good either way. Chris down to 5. You see he does have in hand Sidisi, Rattleclaw Mystic, Whip of Erebos. He has land 5 here. Maybe he just plays Sidisi. It keeps him alive. Not by much, but it does. Or no, it doesn't keep him alive. Because Travis can dash Lightning Berserker, make it a 2, get a Goblin, or Draconic Roar away the zombie, swing, and then once he blocks the Rabblemaster, he takes 5.
Yeah, Chris needs more than just a creature here to be able to survive.
Yeah, he knows that just hardcasting Sidisi and saying go kills him.
So he's at least got to give enough rope here to Travis to mess this up. If he plays a Morph face down here, possibly, well,
he messes it up.
There is Death Mist Raptor in Chris's graveyard, so that's an additional blocker here, which is a huge deal.
You're right, so that's face down. All right, so there's still some hope. Draw from Travis O'Dell. Here's land 5. That's not going to do much, though. His hand is Lightning Berserker, Draconic Roar. Gonna roar away the token. Chris will flip it up. That'll get back the Death Mist. And you think right now, man, you wish last turn if you're Travis that Rabblemaster had connected.
Yeah, I think that Chris would not be able to survive all this. There's also an issue if you're on Travis's side that you have Lightning Berserker in your hand, so your mana is at a premium at all times. If you go ahead and use your Draconic War last turn, that means this turn you're eligible to dump everything into the Lightning Berserker. Now, with this said, I think that Chris still may have to just block the 2 biggest creatures in play. So it's not all doom and gloom here for Travis, but I think he could have... Getting a hit with Rabblemaster last turn would have been such a big deal. I don't think that Chris would have been able to stabilize even with this sequence.
All right, so we see Zombie in front of Rabblemaster, Death Mist in front of Zergo. So with a pump, Chris will go to 1 here, but he'll get to keep his Death Mist Raptor, and he can cast Sidisi or Whip of Erebos next turn. Berserker will pump. Chris going now down to 1. And Berserker will go back to Travis's hand. Let's see what Chris goes for.
But Chris is going to have 2 blockers against 2 attackers, and if Chris gets the next turn, then Whip of Erebos suddenly is a huge deal.
If Travis draws a land, Travis has a line to win. He can play Lightning Berserker, pump it 3 times, go to combat, bring back Phoenix, and kill Chris here. Dragon Whisperer and Lightning Berserker.
But this opens up the play next turn as well.
Right, but the Whip of Erebos is going to gain Chris a lot of life. Is it enough? There's a Lightning Berserker and a lot of red mana symbols. I don't know that Chris can just play Whip and start swinging things. That's very risky. It's close.
Because committing an attacker here is an enormous cost.
Right. But he has to, because he knows that Dragon Whisperer can jump. So he's going to play Whip. He's going to have to swing something. I can't imagine he can swing 2 creatures, because then he can't afford... He needs to leave back a blocker for Lightning Berserker.
Yeah.
So he'll swing 1 creature. And if he's going to swing 1 creature, might as well swing the 4 power, because it's more life.
Yeah.
So Whip.
Well, it's also. I mean, it's not clear to me that's the case because the Deathmatch Raptor is also way more likely to die from a top deck removal spell from Travis.
So maybe the 1 point doesn't matter enough.
Well, no, because if Chris goes to 4,
Oh,
he's dead
jump,
on
pump,
board.
pump,
He can
yeah.
just dump. He can just jump the Dragon Whisperer and pump twice. So Chris has to go to at least 5.
So he has to swing Sidisi. Now, if Travis, he's short. I was gonna say he could pump the Lightning Berserker, bring back Flame Wake, jump Dragon Whisperer. We're closer, but we're not.
Well,
all the way.
he can just attack in the air there and not engage with the Deathmatch Raptor for 1 turn.
Once again, a top deck land gets it again.
Yeah.
He can pump up to 4. No, he's still short.
Right,
but
because
not by as much,
Flame Wake Phoenix is a red mana to get it back.
Yeah. He could double pump Dragon Whisperer, bring back Flame Wake Phoenix, and then jump Dragon Whisperer, and then it would be 6.
Yeah.
So land still gets him. Nykthos is breaking even right now.
Yeah, Chris barely hanging on here. But if he gets to next turn, it starts getting real good because then Whip of Erebos is getting back to DC. The ground starts getting locked up.
That's the land. Does Travis see it? He does have Chris right now.
Yeah, you can pump the Dragon Whisperer twice to 4 power.
Get back Flame Wake, jump Dragon Whisperer.
And that's 6.
Yeah, all in the air. See if he does it. 1 mana to jump Dragon Whisperer. He does not. He's just going to swing it in the air and pump twice. Chris down to 1.
I mean, that's a stay of execution. Now Chris gets a big opportunity on the way back here.
He's missed. He did the right play, except he missed forgot he had a Flame Wake Phoenix in the yard.
Yeah.
And that could have come back and done it. And it may cost him the game. Here's Sidisi whipped back, and I think it looks like it might. This is a lot of life points from Chris. So both Sidisi's in play, Zombie in play.
And hitting Zombie is such a big deal here because it leaves him with a blocker on the way back to check Lightning Berserker.
He has Chris Morris Lent navigate, weathered the storm. At 1 life, gain some life, goes back down to 1. It's been at 1 multiple times this game. Now, there is a point at which, I was saying, eventually he may have to worry about Dragon Whisperer making guys. We're a ways off that, but it's not.
Yeah, we're pretty far
unreasonable.
away. I mean, Travis needs a ton more mana for that to come into play.
And there still are top decks that just kill Chris if he's not careful here.
Yeah.
Crater's Claws, for example, is really bad. Stormbreath Dragon probably kills him. I don't think Death Thunderbreak Regent kills him, but it certainly isn't good.
But that's another zombie. I mean, Chris is coming up the works quite a bit here. He's going to have more flexibility to make some aggressive attacks the next turn if he wants to. Gain a lot of life here.
8 life there. Yeah, he goes up, gains 7, goes to 8. So both players at 8. This is Travis's last chance to win, and I don't know if he has 8 damage anymore. Draw for the turn is another land, so that'll be it. Chris Morris Lent takes game 3, and he is your winner over Travis O'Dell.
Yeah, quite the sweat there. Travis had it. I mean, it involves something in the graveyard, and that stuff gets missed all the time. But once he misses the kill that turn, Chris is going to turn around and lock that game up real fast with Whip of Erebos.
Well, for Chris Morris Lent, congratulations. He starts the tournament 5-0, and once again, he is leading the charge here in the Northwest. 1 more win should put him into day 2, but he has setting his sights much higher than that.
Yeah, he's had a very good run of success here in the Open Series here in the Northwest area. I believe a player from Seattle. And the Open Series in Seattle and Portland have been very good to him thus far.
Congratulations here. And still Ty Reanimator, not the deck I expected to see doing particularly well. These mid-range decks have been a scary place to be in a format of mono reds and Esper Dragons.